the theme for tonight around acting from stage to screen. I'm not sure if all of you know, but Les Filles du Roi was a staged musical here at the Cult originally, and has then been adapted into this film. And both of these very talented people were in both versions. So I'm really curious to hear what that experience was like and how you needed to adapt or change now that a camera was involved in the process.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, it was really a treat. One, because we filmed this during the pandemic, so anyone who works in theater knows that all of our work went away. So this was a lovely opportunity to get back working, and also to get back into a role that I had done previously, I think 3 years prior. The theatrical performance happened in May. I remember this because I actually got married on my day off.
You did.
Yeah, I did.
You did.
I had my wedding on the dark day of the run at the York. It was May of 2018, and you know the character doesn't change that much, right? The heart of the character remains the same, and the journey and the overall narrative arc of the story stays pretty true to what the stage version was. So mainly the adaptations that I had to make were knowing that what's being looked at is not my full body as if I'm on stage, but you know what's in the shot. So you know we're doing mid shots and close-ups and all of that. So the heart and the core of the acting remains the same, and really it was a treat to get to revisit these characters and to get to perform them with the majority of the people that I performed this character with on the stage.
Yeah. Just to add on that, there was one shot in particular that was really challenging when it came to syncing with the music. There's this beautiful aerial shot of us in a rowboat on our way to the New World, and there were no speakers available to us because we're in the middle of water. So Julie McIsaac actually had her cell phone, and she had hid it under her linen skirts, and we could barely hear it. So unfortunately, we couldn't sing to voice, because if we did, we would totally lose tempo and track of where we were in the song. So we were just kind of trying to make it look like we're singing full voice, like we do so often, because Raes is totally right. It was very synonymous with the theatrical experience. But that one particular one was really hard. It was kind of whisper singing, but you look like you're singing with your whole chest, right? It was interesting.
Yeah.
That is so funny. I love this idea of the little sneaky things that we have to do.
Yeah.
One of the things that I find is so prominent in this film is the language.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious to hear about what it was to learn Ghanaian Geha and your time with with Akwesasne.
Yeah, with a Native American traveling college, in Akwesasne in Cornwall, Ontario. That was a real treat. That happened before we even did the stage version. There was some of the core actors went out there, and we trained and studied for a week, learning Ghanaian Geha, which is Mohawk language. It was quite splendid experience. I also don't speak French too, so that was another difficult part was learning all of that, and we had really great people who also taught us French. But yeah, the Native American Traveling College, that was really special. This language, this Ghanaian Geha Mohawk language, there was a real resurgence there on the reserve, and that was great to see, and to see a bunch of young people speaking their language. There was a Tim Hortons there, and we went to the Tim Hortons to grab some breakfast or something before we went, and all of the menus were in English and Ghanaian Geha, and all of the people that were working at the Tim Hortons were all young people, and they were all speaking in Mohawk to one another. And so it was brilliant to see, when when in general, I think when we think of Indigenous languages, we think of them being these things that are not as full of life as they once were, and are being lost as elders leave us. But to see that this language is really coming back into that community for sure. I mean, the stop signs were in Mohawk language. They've done a tremendous job of revitalizing and passing on that language, and learning it was a marvelous experience as well, because getting to learn a language where it's not like you read from left to right. It starts in the middle of the idea, and then it sort of branches out on either side. It was amazing, and to get the correct pronunciations, we went through the entire script. Even the lines that we say in English, those are translated for us into Mohawk language, and we learned the pronunciations, and we were allowed to do recordings of the elders speaking the lines, and we were able to practice them. And I haven't talked to anyone who is a fluent Mohawk speaker to see if I got everything right, but I really, really tried my best and hope that I did, so that I could do this character justice and really bring that language forth, not being a speaker myself. So that was a real tremendous experience, one that feels like it's going to be a once in a lifetime sort of thing, and yeah, just to be welcomed into their territory with such open arms. And they were curious about what is this thing that you're doing, but they were so happy that people from all the way on the other side of Turtle Island were going to be able to share their language in some sort of meaningful way.
Yeah, that sounds really beautiful and such like a meaningful experience. I've been hogging the mic, so I want to open it up to the audience and see if there's any questions out there from anyone.
Was it hard to go from French to English to First Nation language, Mohawk?
Yeah, there is a difficulty, right? Because I je ne parle pas français, right? I don't speak French. So there was, and I do all of my other acting in English. So there definitely was this shift that needs to happen in the brain. And I think that, I'm not a bilingual person myself, but my wife is. My wife speaks 4 languages. So I know from her that her thinking is slightly different in each one of those languages, right? And it connects to a certain part of her own life that is specific to that language. So I tried to emulate that through the character. So there is this ability, this thing that happens where I imagine that when Jean-Baptiste is singing in Mohawk, he's singing in connection with the Mohawk ancestors. When he's singing in French, he's singing in connection to his father, who was a French fur trader, and the French people that are there. And then when he's singing in English, it's more of, I guess I was considering it more of the common language. So yeah, that shift was difficult. Also because sometimes in remembering the lines, I have to remember what exactly I'm saying, of course. So there is that shift where it's been translated and I've gone over and I've been really specific going through about what is the center of the thought of this line, right? What is the center of the thought? What is the word that is the most meaningful word that I'm using to impact the other person? And try to get what I need, want, or feel like I deserve from that person. So yeah, there was this shift that did have to happen. And that's more tied to the acting process. Technically, it is more difficult because, as I'm sure you know, right, the sounds of the languages are different in the mouth. So technically, there is that need to articulate the mouth in a different way.
Je suis désolé, ma soeur a ruiné votre robe.
C'est votre sœur?
Oui.
Je croyais qu'elle était votre femme.
Non. A teaching. The French are obsessed with marriage.
I find it interesting, the idea around like having different worldviews embedded in language. And so oftentimes it's not a direct translation from English to another language. And the beauty that is within that and the complexity that is within that in having to switch between those three worldviews.
It's something, like talking about the different languages. Skanagoga, right? Skanagoga. That's how the Mohawk people introduce themselves, and it's not really a greeting. It's more of a question, and it's like, do you carry within you the inner peace or the inner light? And then you say, yes, I carry it within me, right? That's how they would say hello to each other. That's how they would greet each other, and there's a deeper meaning and a deeper connection, because you're talking about having something within you rather than just hello,
Where was the location, and is it in Mohawk territory? And I'm curious about the sets as well.
Yeah, so everything that was filmed except for the longhouses, which were actually in Mohawk territory at Jewelers, which is a historical site that's been the recreation of a Mohawk longhouse. Everything else was shot in British Columbia. We filmed a lot at Fort Langley, actually. We filmed a lot at Dees Slough, so a lot of the area there where you see the canoe. And a lot of the shots of the trees. And I know that they were very specific about the different types of trees that were and plants that were in the shots, because they had to try to incorporate and make it look as if those are the plants and trees that are indigenous to the Mohawk territory. So they were very, very particular about that, especially in the drone shots. I remember them talking about it. I remember Corey being really specific about that. When the pandemic actually, when I was in the middle of doing a show actually with Merewyn. We were in the same show together. We were actually, this is strange, we were actually performing at Fort Langley, which is where we shot the majority of the movie.
Yeah.
And that's where we were when we were actually in the middle of a run. But, things are back now, and thank goodness. And now we're able to share something that we filmed during that time with everyone, which is brilliant.
No, there was a lot of grief there, and through grief, there have come some really wonderful artistic creations like this. And this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
One of my favorite scenes in the film is when they're on the boat. I wonder, Merewyn, if you can talk a little bit about what it was like to create that scene.
If I remember correctly, the day was blisteringly hot. It was very, 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 very hot out. It was noon, so the sun was directly above us, and the clothing that we're wearing, Marshall McMahon, the designer of all of the costumes, was really accurate in the types of fabrics that would have been worn, and they were very heavy and very hot. So that, also with where we were shooting that day in particular, there was a tide, even though it was just like a little river. So the water started to go down, and we actually ended up getting stuck in the mud. And there was a portion of the day where the grips and a lot of the crew were actually pushing the boat to make it look like we were moving, because we were totally landlocked. So there were a lot of different things going on, that you have the luxury in theater to just be in the moment, telling the story to people that are actively there and listening. So it was definitely challenging for those reasons to tell the story in this different way. When we initially produced the theater show, we were really exploring the different types of women that were coming to this new world. The ones that wanted to go, the ones that didn't, the ones that were far too young to go. Also, of course, the ones that didn't make the journey, especially from Marie-Jeanne. That was quite a significant part of her and her sister story. And so bringing along, I think, the multi-layered facets, because in the show, there are more than just 3 of us. I think in the shot that you're referring to, there were just 3 of us in the boat, but on stage, it was the full chorus in that song altogether. And I think the trick there was taking all of those different storylines that we had woven together for the theater production and just trying to encompass them with just the 3 of us. There was the the pivot, I would say.
Les filles du roi, les filles du roi.
Just wonder about your experience as actors with the theater performance, where you get the whole arc every night you perform, versus the film, where I imagine, you know, scene by scene, it's a bit different.
Yeah, so it was. I had to really go through, and we were told beforehand that it was going to be shot out of sequence, and we did get a shot list, right, about when we were going to be called and where. We did all of the stuff in the boats, and all of that was done part of sort of the first half of filming, and then right at the end of filming, and all the stuff in Fort Langley was in the center, and that's kind of the center of the story, all of that. So it was making sure that I really knew what my character's journey was through the entire piece, and I'd already performed it a few years prior, right? So so I did have that knowledge of knowing pretty clearly where the story was and where it was going, but being really specific about what was the moment before the scene that I'm shooting for my character, right? And then knowing in the actor's brain what happens after.
Yeah, just to add to that, that's exactly what I would have said. But also, because we get more than one shot at it, you know, when you do it just tail or top to tail in a theater show, you just have one chance, right? Which is also, I think, the beauty of live theater is that, you know, if something goes wrong, there isn't a chance for a second take. But of course, with film, you have that ability to really finesse the detail, which is, in a way, it's a blessing and a curse as an actor, because while it's also being totally taken out of context in regards to the plot and the storyline, where you are and what you want, but also you have to keep that integrity for every shot that you do. Yeah. I think that that is also something that is quite challenging too, you know, specifically with some of the darker subject matter, having to redo that over and over and over until you have that take. Is, as an actor, it's definitely a specific type of challenge.
How will you find me there? They say the world is bigger there than here. Send us a map if I don't leave here now. Sickness will take me first, I fear. Everything wet and cold and leaking. This dirty city sewer reeking.
And who would have thought that this piece that was meant to be a tour became a film, has now had tremendous success, and we're continuing to explore community screenings to bring this story to more folks across Canada. I'm gonna wrap it up there, but thank you so much for spending this time with us this evening and for sharing your thoughts. It's really great to be able to have this kind of conversation with the audience.
Thank you.